Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1060 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. So yeah guys, I'm pretty much literally shitting my pants right now. In all honesty, I don't mind it. Sometimes there are things that are just not surprising. They're just not surprising, or at least I wasn't surprised by it. I expected something like this to eventually happen, but it does not change the fact that I'm losing my mind. You guys already know what I'm talking about, but let's go through the chapter in order. I feel like it was a minor win that we started this chapter with the Strats and Luffy's reaction to the Sabo news in the newspaper that he killed Cobra. And I said this in the review where Dragon reacted to this news, and I thought Dragon's reaction didn't seem very Luffy-like. I didn't think that he trusted Sabo enough, at least based on the translation that I read. And so this felt like confirmation of that because Luffy did exactly what I thought he would do. He heard that Sabo killed Cobra and he said, "No way." Which in my opinion is the appropriate response for anybody who knows Sabo, and was in fact proven true later in the chapter. But the conversation after this I found to be interesting, and it actually showed a lot of growth, if not from Luffy, then from Zoro. I mean, we've walked down this road before. If you remember back in Zo, Luffy was concerned about Sanji, and Zoro offered very similar advice to what he's offering here. Basically, you can't go get Sanji because we'll involve the Yonko Big Mom, and we can't deal with two Yonko at the same time. You see this sort of echoed in Zoro's comments here about Vivi. "You moron, that's the den of the enemy. You want to take on Navy headquarters?" Luffy's like, "Damn straight, what's wrong, Zoro? You chicken?" One of the lessons I feel like from the whole Yonko saga from Whole Cake Island all the way to Wano is that, look man, if Luffy has some impulse to rescue a crew member or a friend, then it doesn't matter the danger that might lead to, because they're gonna win anyway. But the reason that I say that this is growth for Zoro is he clarifies, look, simmer down. I'm just saying that we don't have any leads. And this was my feeling from pretty much the moment that we discovered that Vivi was missing. That's a big difference between her and Sanji's. Luffy knew where Sanji was. He knew where to go in order to ask him for the truth. With Vivi, I mean, she might be in Mary Joie, but she could literally be anywhere. They don't have leads, and they don't know that she's really in danger yet. So if a situation arose, like the next day there's a new newspaper, you find out that Vivi is captured by the world government, that she's a traitor, she's scheduled for execution, then, yeah, Luffy is going to go and rescue her. And I think at that point in time, Zoro would agree. And that's different from how Zoro handled Sanji. To me, this is an evolution of Zoro as the vice captain. I want to clarify, right, that various strats offer advice to Luffy in various situations, so vice captain is kind of a nebulous idea, but in this situation, Zoro's actually playing that role, and he attempted to play the role in the past, but he was actually wrong. This time I think that he's actually right. So the crew as a whole has grown beyond their physical strength. But anyway, I really enjoyed this chapter, but I also think that it's important to point out that there is some criticism for this one, and mainly, and this is just tough in general, as I'm writing my story, I can tell you that it's not something I thought about before then, but as you do, it's like, whoa, this is a real problem, is when you give the reader and certain characters information, but you don't give every character that needs to know the same information. So it almost requires you, unless you design it different or design it better, it requires you to give the same information more than once. And that was a lot of what was happening in this chapter. Obviously not what hyped everyone to the nth degree, but the things about Sabo or about Vivi, about Cross Guild, and the things happening around the world, Oda needed to inform the Strat crew of what was going on. This is even true when we get into Luffy's dream. We already knew about Luffy's dream. We've seen several scenes like this before, but it's clear that the crew needed to know. So really in this situation, unless you can go back in time and basically group everyone who needs to know and explain it at one time, you're forced to try to make it more interesting. in whatever small or large way that you can. So as Oda explains Vivi again, something that the readers already know, he includes this other element of Zoro or the crew's growth. And also some jokes about Zoro now being pretty much the devil. When it comes to Luffy's dream, which we saw in Wano and with Yamato, we see pretty much every Straw Hat's reaction to this dream and the various nuance, basically giving us maybe more clues as to what it is. I would say that more so in this case, I did feel as if it was filler. I'm not quite as hyped as I was about Luffy's dream. I know that it's the title of the chapter, but I don't feel like enough was added here for me to really be excited beyond where I was before. But it is important, without question, for the Straw Hats to know what it is that Luffy really wants. I mean, we've gone through this whole story with the perception that Luffy's end goal is to become the king of the pirates, perhaps to become the most free. I think at this point it's very obvious that this is not the extent of it. It's something a little bit more specific. It's something that is even more ridiculous. There's been lots of theories over the past several years since we've had scenes like this. Things like Luffy wants to throw the world's biggest party. You know, everybody comes to the party. Or Luffy wants to be friends with everybody. It's something corny like this, and I feel like all the reactions are pretty accurate to these sorts of thoughts. Full disclosure, I think that the party involving everybody, that's what I think. But it'll be curious to see how exactly Luffy logics this out, because just as a random intrusive thought, when I think about, hey, I want to have a party with everyone, I kind of think about Big Mom, which is obviously probably not the vibe that Luffy wants to go for, where he forces people to party with him, right? So it has to be of their own volition, they want to. The other issue is logistical. Like, I don't think that Luffy's dream is, I want to eventually have a party with everyone and just have a bunch of, small parties. No, he wants a party with the rest of the world, if that's really what it is. So how do you get all of the world together to realistically have a party like that? I think about perhaps a world flood, flooding event that makes a lot of sense to me in a pirate story. Also with the potential destruction of the Red Line or weather-related powers, a flood could be a real thing. And we also have the Noah already in the story. It has some role, and it's the Noah, right? So it's needed in times of a world flood. So that's kind of how I see that, where how do you get the whole world together? You flood the world. Sometime during the endgame. I may end up making a standalone theory here. But before we turn the pages, two other things that I want to talk about. Robin is reading the newspaper. She rattles off things that we already know, but also mentions other characters, other people that we would know in the newspaper if Luffy, basically asks Luffy, do you want to know about these things? And I guess that he doesn't, or he wants to know when it's relevant, but it just suggests that what we know isn't the only things that are happening across the world, and I hope that Oda eventually, gives us whatever this is. And lastly, seems like a small little Easter egg thing, but Robin tells us after Frankie's like, oh, let's just find the last road poneglyph, then boom, laughed. I was like, hold on, not that easy. It's been a long time since the last road poneglyph was seen. The wording here is fan translation, it may be incorrect, but the wording here suggests that Robin knows that this poneglyph was once, everybody knew where it was. And we know that's true because it was originally the road poneglyph probably in Fishman Island. But by the time that we got there, the road poneglyph had been moved. So it just suggests to me that Robin's been having conversations outside of the Straw Hats, maybe in Fishman Island or with the revolutionaries, where there's just general knowledge that, yeah, there was a red poneglyph in Fishman Island, but it's not there anymore. And nobody seems to know where it is. But the reason that I bring this up is I do feel like this confirms that there was no big event associated with the road poneglyph in Fishman Island. Nothing huge happened where that poneglyph was made into a big deal as it was stolen. It was there one day and then quietly in the night, it's gone. That's the impression that I'm left with. For me, this reaffirms that Shanks or Roger or Rayleigh or somebody that they were connected to hid the poneglyph. That's just how this reads to me. That's the easiest explanation that I can give it. They knew that it was in too vulnerable of a location, and somebody was tasked with hiding it better. But yeah, let's talk about what everybody probably wants to talk about. And that's Sabo, the Revolutionary Army, Emu, the Gorosei, and most likely the ancient weapon Uranus. So Sabo gives the Revolutionary Army a call. It's revealed to us through Cypherpole that he's not using a white Dendemushi, and they speculate that's because he's desperate. The image that I have in my mind is that Sabo's been on the run. It's been really hectic since he's left. He's had to, everything wrong that could have gone wrong did. And so he finally gets to a place where he has access to a Dendemushi where he feels safe. He doesn't have time for a white one because he needs to tell the Revolutionary Army what he saw. But without the white Dendemushi, the world government is able to track his location, figure out where he is, and that place is Lolulsia Kingdom. I probably pronounced that wrong, but it's one of the kingdoms that allied with the Revolutionary Army after they declared war. And we see that the Gorosei are overhearing this conversation because the Marines in Cypherpole are intercepting his call, and they think to themselves, Lolulsia, how unlucky. So the first thing that Sabo tells them is that he wasn't the one who killed King Cobra. Of course, we all knew that was true, right? But the only one who didn't seem convinced before was Dragon. I kind of actually imagine that was the first question that Dragon asked of Sabo, because Sabo clearly had something even more important that he needed to say. He says, listen, when I was in Marijois, I saw something unbelievable. And then it pans over to Lolulsia Kingdom, and clouds are beginning to form. The sky is getting dark. People are commenting. It's almost as if something huge is in the sky. Sabo continues, it happened in the throne room at Pangea Castle. I thought that there was no king of the world, but the empty throne wasn't empty. I saw. And then we see the world government cut the signal to the surveillance division's transponder snails. They don't actually want their own subordinates to hear what Sabo is about to say, which is, honestly, I speculated this the other day. I felt like this could be the great reward of Sabo, basically telling the truth. He didn't kill King Cobra, however, he saw something important. So the call being intercepted was potentially a good thing for the Revolutionary Army. In fact, Sabo may have intended, that's why he didn't use a white Dendemushi, is because he wanted the government to hear what he had to say. But they cut the signal. But as Sabo goes to explain this, or finish explaining this to the Revolutionary Army, we have an order from the world government. As far as the surveillance division is concerned, no one detected anything abnormal today. No information was intercepted. As for Lolulsia, that country never existed. And then we see the thing in the sky, whatever it was, wiped Lolulsia off the map. So first things first, it could be a little bit confusing. I don't think that Emu acted this quickly on the intercepted call of Sabo. As the Gorosei point out, I think that Sabo was unlucky because they had already targeted Lolulsia Kingdom, and then Sabo happened to be there. So I'm really not sure that my opinion is any different from literally anybody else that you would hear. At the same time, it does not change how hyped this is. I think that there was like some sort of Death Star or ship that was up in the clouds. This is the ancient weapon Uranus. Emu and the Gorosei talked about the great cleansing in the past. In order to do some sort of great cleansing, you needed some sort of weapon that could accomplish that for you. So this is a straight continuation of the Emu Gorosei plots that we've been so excited for since the Reverie. The world government potentially having an ancient weapon makes a lot of sense, particularly as we have not heard anything about Uranus aside from the fact that it exists. But yeah, in broad strokes, this is precisely what I thought would happen. It always made a ton of sense to me for the world government to come to possess an ancient weapon, going back to Frankie flashbacks with the inventions that he made that were turned against him, used against him in order to cause harm to the people that he loved. And Tom speaking about the makers of Pluton's fear of it falling into the wrong hands, right? Like, I thought it would come to this. But what makes it so impactful, in my opinion, is, I mean, we've seen ancient weapons before. They've been explained to us like Shirahoshi, but this is the first one that has really felt like an ancient weapon. I should clarify, it may not be an ancient weapon. We'll discuss some counterintuitive thoughts here in a moment, but you know, this is how we all envisioned it when it was first brought up. And to see it, you think to yourself, why would anybody create such a thing? And how do you stop this? At least before countless islands are just wiped. There's been speculations before about the hole in Enies lobby being created by an ancient weapon. Well, I mean, looking at the destruction here, I wouldn't be surprised, basically. But the only real question that I have is why the Lucia Kingdom? Why was that one so important? And the only real answer that I have is this was a message. Simple as that. I don't think that Lucia Kingdom was that important. I may be wrong. There may be some details behind the scenes that we're not aware of. But aside from being an ally to the Revolutionary Army, breaking away from the world government, I don't think that it was particularly important. This was simply Emu to Dragon. Look, if you want to fight us, get ready. All the people that you saved are going to vanish. Press my buttons. And overall, I think the concept behind this, like why it works, is tried and true. It's like Star Wars, right? You start off with battle cruisers, which are the Empire's main fearsome weapon, and they're incredibly destructive. That's the One Piece equivalent of a Buster Call. But in secret, they have, or are building, the Death Star. That's what this is. I low-key kind of want it to look like a moon, just straight up. Blends in where people come across it. Oh, look, there's something in the sky. Oh, it's just a moon. We've seen one before close to the surface of the planet in a cover story with Capone, so it wouldn't be too out of place in the wacky world of One Piece. And I'm also reminded of Enel in the Arc Maxima. Looking at this chapter and going back, that just seems like foreshadowing. I wonder if there's a more direct connection between the two inventions, like perhaps Enel had access to some technology, blueprints for Uranus or some predecessor of it. But ultimately, the objective is the same. The contraption is created and has the ability to wipe islands off the map. But yeah, it feels like the community is all in agreement here, and it's tough not to be. Like, this is probably the ancient weapon Uranus during the Void Century or sometime afterwards. The world government acquired it. You could dig into this in a million different ways. I'm not going to do that, but you know, there's so many possibilities, and that's part of what makes it so cool. But just some counterintuitive thoughts, since everybody is in agreement, just throw some ideas out there for some moderate twists, potentially, is this isn't an ancient weapon. This isn't Uranus. What it is the world government recreating one of the ancient weapons, or developing a new, more powerful one. One thought that I like, if you look at Shirahoshi is not on the same level as this in terms of just pure destructive power, in terms of fearsomeness. One thing that when I see this, I ask, like, why would you even create this? With Shirahoshi, it is not the same. It doesn't feel like something that somebody created, it just feels like a natural wonder. It could be true that all of the ancient kingdom's ancient weapons were more like natural wonders. I know that Pluton was a thing that was actually developed, but did they also create another thing just like it with Uranus? But we know that the world government has been devoting tech for probably 1,000 years for the purposes of creating power as it naturally exists in the world. Things like giants, things like dragons, things like devil fruit. The world government are trying to become masters of these natural powers, be able to create them. So it would make sense for this to not actually be an ancient weapon, but be the world government's version of one. Another counterintuitive thought that I find interesting is this is not an ancient weapon. However, it does date all the way back to the Void Century. Basically, there was another weapon that existed at the same time as the ancient weapons, but was even more erased from history. Essentially a fourth different weapon, because the people that ended up forming the world government were the ones to utilize it. But yeah, let your imaginations run wild. Guys, we're heading to the end game. Once you utilize a power like this, obviously knowledge of it at some point in time will spread. I assume that the Revolutionary Army and the world are going to turn against the world government at some point for using a weapon like this. So, one of the things that sticks out I haven't addressed yet is there's no way Sabo's dead. There's just no way. That dude has been training to survive explosions since he was a wee lad. So there's just no way that he's dead. He's going to know about Emu on the throne. He's also going to see what happened with that island. So it's about to go down. My honest expectation is that whenever Blackbeard and Luffy or whoever discovers Laugh-Tale, that the world government is going to send this thing to go erase it. That's what I think is going to happen. But yeah, I'm just trying to imagine being a Cypherpole agent as you're listening in to this conversation between Sabo and the Revolutionary Army, and then suddenly you're told, yeah, the island they're talking about, that never existed. Like, if I'm there, I'm like, yeah, nope, I'm done. Didn't need to hear that. Ready for retirement. Islands just don't stop existing, bruh. Anyway, regarding Vivi, my impression before all of this was that Imu, or there's some drama with the Nefertari family that led to Copa's death, but ultimately, Imu selected Vivi as a light to erase. So I think that Vivi was captured by Imu, through Imu in some way. So I guess my opinion right now is that Sabo was there in some way, followed people in some way, and that's what led him to the throne room where he was able to see him. So even though we said earlier that we don't know where Vivi is, I guess my opinion is that she's in Mary Joie, unless Sabo was able to rescue her, which would be also, actually that's not equally cool. That would be more cool. I hope that happened. But let's not get too stuck in the weeds. There's obviously a lot going on with Revolutionary Army, Sabo, Imu, Gorosei, their weapon. I think that we're going to find out, probably not within the next few chapters, but by the end of whatever arc is next, I kind of expect more clues. And I don't think that that's going to take too long to get there. We then ended the chapter going back to the strats, and actually I forgot to mention this, but Carrot for Nakama is basically dead. Because, the notorious barrel, everyone's like, Carrot's gonna pop out of a barrel. I thought this as well, but we're not gonna talk about that. Inside the barrel was, in fact, our other barrel goer, Caribou. Not only did Oda take away the joy of a new Nakama, take away the joy of adding Carrot, but he gave us Caribou instead, which is like coal in your stocking in Christmas. It is purely malicious. Some people are still holding on to hope though, and to these people I say, good luck. But the theory being tossed around, I heard this from Straw Hat Jedi, is that Caribou's eaten Carrot. Like the swamp fruit, he ate her, so she's also in the barrel, like, maybe. I doubt it with every core of my being, but maybe. So anyway, the joke is that Caribou's in the barrel, but they realized this quickly and then locked the barrel up, but they kept Caribou with them for whatever reason, so I'm fine with it. So we pan back to them at the end of the chapter after literally a nuke was dropped on Lucia. And it appears as if the Straw Hats are nearing an island. As I understand it, basically the weather in the Grand Line is erratic, but when it stabilizes or becomes consistent roughly, then you know that you're nearby an island. Jinbei asks Nami if they are near an island, and she guesses that it might be a winter island. I think that this is really interesting because I don't think that Elbaf is a winter island. So it appears as if we're going to make a stop before Elbaf. The only thing that immediately comes to mind is, one, we have Kaido's favorite island, which was a winter island. That could be important. Also, because of the last chapter with the new pacifista, Vegapunk is just on my mind. I'm reminded of Frankie during the time skip. He went to Vegapunk's island, which was a winter island. That one was in Paradise, but I just associate Vegapunk with winter islands for whatever reason. I expect him soon in the story, so maybe. Either way, I'm really excited. So nearing an island or not, the weather is no joke. And Chopper is wearing this nice hat that he got from Tama, and then they're just trying to survive, right? Jinbei's flexing his skills, Nami's flexing her skills. Chopper comes out in the middle of this like, hi guys, and gets blown off the ship because of the hat. Luffy's like, I got you, stretches out to get him, and now he's flying as well. And then suddenly there is a water phenomenon, like a water spout tornado. They called it a giant eddy, so that's probably the correct word. Even though I really, really doubt whether any natural eddy phenomenon looks anything like this. But at this point, I got insanely hyped because I have thought that we were about to encounter another knockup stream or something like that. That didn't come to pass. Instead, Zoro, because Zoro's very consistent, was like, well, there's this thing here and there's a woman's voice coming out of it, so why don't we just cut it? Best plan ever. And so he did so, they cut it, and a woman did indeed appear out of it. Jewelry Bonney. Explain that, Oda. I dare you. Channeling my inner Basil Hawkins, I would hazard a guess that the chance of this meeting was approximately 0%, which in One Piece is roughly equal to 100%. This reminds me of like a general rule that you should abide by in storytelling. Like, if it's cool, it doesn't matter. Seriously. Logic doesn't matter, you know? Makes sense, who cares? All right, is it cool? Big check mark. Speaking honestly though, you know, we've talked about how I feel as if Oda's speeding up the story a little bit, or he's trying to make his deadlines better. And he took his break in order to streamline the story. That's one of the things that was his intention. And I think that this could be related to that. I mean, look, in situations like this, it's usually normal for Oda to have some sort of cover series for the character to show you where they were and how they got to where they are. Even if something like really strange like this happens, you have some stepping stones to work with. In this case, I think that Oda wanted Jewelry Bonney in the story encountering the Straw Hats. Just, you know, off the top of my head, right, like most of the Supernova have gotten highlights in the story recently, and yes, Jewelry Bonney was in Mary Joie and interacted with the Revolutionary Army, but it's so much different than the kind of shine that Law, Kid, Capone, Basil Hawkins, and Apu, all of those characters had just so much more time in the story for us to get to know them. So it feels right for the same to happen to Jewelry Bonney. I'm also looking for Arouge at some point as well. I might have missed somebody, but I don't think that I did. So I think that Oda wanted that to happen and made it happen. And he sprinkled a little the secret sauce, the awesome sauce over it to make it work. And it worked. I'm really curious though why Jewelry Bonney is here. I mean, last we saw her, right, with the Revolutionary Army. How the hell did she get out here by herself into a water phenomenon? What is going on? But you know, even more exciting than the how here, because I half expect a troll answer, is the why. Like, what is Jewelry Bonney going to do? What's her role to play with the Strat crew? I can't see it. I really can't, and that's exciting. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be wrong here, but I believe the last time that we saw Bonney, though, we never actually saw her leave Mary Joie, just interact with the revolutionaries as they were there. But when we see them again in Kamabaka Kingdom, she is not there. So we have a time skip basically for her, where anything could happen. My secret hope is that she was with Sabo, perhaps, and may have some knowledge as to what happened to him during Mary Joie to bring some of these story ideas together. But obviously we'll see. It's a huge shock that she's not with Kuma though, after all the time spent trying to save him. Another way to look at this as well is Vegapunk, right? We know Vegapunk did something to Kuma. Even after saving Kuma, he's not saved. So going back to this random idea that I have that Vegapunk is associated with Winter Islands here, we're at a Winter Island. Maybe Bonney is looking for some sort of cure, whatever that might mean, for Kuma. That would make a lot of sense as well, because we do expect Vegapunk in the story soon, so maybe Vegapunk is her target. But yeah, I mean, I think that we can all smell it, right? You smell the One Piece adventure with the chapter itself. A new island looms. This is so freaking incredibly hype. Not to mention the stakes with the world, the weapon that Imu used. I was literally floored. I mean, you know, just, it's shocking even though it shouldn't have been. Like you expected it, but still, wow. So yeah, pretty obviously looking forward to the next one. That's pretty much what I had to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Whether I missed something from the chapter, just let me know. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, join the squad, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.